What's up, everybody? I've got Zach Collins on here with me. We're going to do a little interview on how he grew his previous coaching programs to multi-million dollar years. He is our head coach inside of Ascend, along with myself. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear his story and learn all about Zach, also one of my best friends in the world. So, dude, thank you so much for coming on here and doing this with me.
Of course, man. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate that.
Of course, man. Well, let's have you take it away. Tell everybody like your story and like your background and all that stuff.
Yeah, man. So starting the story out, I mean, I started in sales, essentially. I started at a car dealership and I worked a lot. It was really rough. And then I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I'm sure most people have heard of. And that book really kind of shot me into a trajectory of getting into business and kind of wanting to understand more about it. So I ended up reading that book, doing a lot of research and buying my first coaching program, and then quitting my job because I believed in myself. Didn't make any money at all. I just quit. So that was crazy. And then I got into my first coaching business and really started to put things together, understand, what was going on, all that good stuff. And my mentor at that time was like basically grooming me to be a coach of coaches. And I didn't even know it at the time. I was like, what am I even supposed to teach these people? But he ended up teaching me everything, fulfillment, all of it. And my very first business was called Capital Consultants. And I was teaching people how to start their first coaching program as well while I was starting mine. So it was kind of crazy. But it ended up working out and getting them to their first 10K a month. Because my very first month, I crushed that. I actually did 22K. So that was my first month. And a lot of that was just solely based off of me being good at sales. So I ended up crushing it and continuing to grow that. And I grew that to about 91K a month, 92K a month. Was doing really well with that. And then met a business partner, a really good friend of mine as well. And we started a new coaching program teaching sales. That seemed to be a lot better for me, better fit for me because of where I came from. He came from a sales background as well. So it just seemed really, really nice. We started that, and in the first 4 to 6 months, we grew to 100K very quickly. And then after that, we were doing anywhere between 230 to 250K a month. So we launched in that one. And now all I do is teach people how to do things, take part-time coaching stuff, and invest. So it's pretty cool.
I love it, man. That's crazy. Like, I thought my kind of like path from like starting a program to getting to like decent money per month was quick, but it wasn't first month, 20K quick. So what were you doing for like client acquisition? How are you finding people?
Yeah, I was just cold DMing people in Facebook groups. Yeah, it was crazy.
When was this?
This was at the end of 2020.
Oh my God.
So it was like peak COVID season. And I was just DMing people on Facebook in groups, and they were answering, and it was great. Some people absolutely couldn't stand me, but the people that were listening, I mean, I was able to close them very easily. So it was pretty cool.
I love it. It's so funny because like when I started mine in 2021, I was also using Facebook groups.
Oh yeah, that was the meta back then.
Yeah, God, it's so funny. So you grew that to pretty much 100K a month within how many months?
That one took roughly about 11 months to grow to about that 90 to 100K mark. That one took a little longer because I was new with everything and I really did not understand team building at all. So I was just doing that all on my own. I was working like crazy.
Wow. Was it like one-on-one or group?
It was one-to-one originally, and then I transitioned to group because I had to. It was way too many people. The only person that I had on my team at that time was one setter, and that was it because I needed somebody to take the DMs over.
So like the whole time you were just doing DMs?
Yeah, I was doing DMs, I was closing, and I was doing fulfillment.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's rare to see somebody hit that level with like just cold DMs and stuff like that without like ads and like all that stuff. I assume you were posting content though, right?
Yeah. I was doing a little bit of content on Facebook and posting content in groups, and I got really good at copywriting for that. But yeah, most of it was just cold DMs and closing as many people as possible. So that was pretty much it.
That's crazy. I want to talk a lot about Simply Close because like I know that was like your bread and butter.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me like that startup story more in detail because you went to like 100K months really fucking quickly.
Yes, very quickly. So I had a buddy of mine. We actually met in a coaching mastermind. And, he was kind of tired of the people that he was teaching a little bit, didn't really want to be in the market that he was in. And I was getting to that point as well where I was like, I want something different. I want something that can really scale and that we can build differently. So we called each other up one day and I was just like, hey, man, you come from a sales background, right? And he was like, yeah. He was like, you do too, right? And I was like, yep, sales, no doubt about it. Like he came from insurance sales and I came from car dealerships. And I was just like, man, we should just start a sales company and just teach people sales. And he was like, bet, I'm down. So we immediately shut down our programs. That was the call. We shut down our programs. We jumped into this new program and this new thing. And we had obviously some cushion with money and all that. So we jumped in, we started it. And the first week we got everything set up. So we actually ran it a little differently. We actually hired people before we were making any sales.
Wow.
And the reason for that is because we wanted to build a system that was going to really work, right? So we started hiring. We hired a salesperson, we hired a head coach, and we hired a DM setter. So we had more than I had the entire time. So it was great. And we jumped into it immediately. And that first month we did 25K. The second month we did 50K. And then we stayed around that 50 to 75K mark until I think it was like 5 or 6 months after that. And then we hit 100K. We started in, I think it was 2022. I'm pretty positive it was 2022. We started in June or July, one of the two. And then in December, we were hitting 100K months.
Insane.
Yeah.
I want to focus on like the first month and like first few months, because a lot of coaches, they're stuck at like 5 or 10K and maybe like 20. But you got there really quickly. So why do you think that happened?
Marketing, 100%. Yeah. A lot of it was marketing. We were heavily focused on volume when it comes to leads because we come from a sales background. So we believed 100% that we could sell anybody. We just needed to talk to people. That was it. So we need to get as many people as we could on calls. So that's what we were heavily focused on and we were heavily optimizing for. And a lot of that came down to making sure you had messaging, right? What was the messaging? Were people responding to it? How many people were clicking on the website? And how many people were actually booking the call from the website? We started tracking that data very quickly and taking, a week to 2 weeks. If it wasn't working, we knew, right? We needed to change something. We needed to adapt really, really fast. And then we started getting crazy people on calls and we were going crazy. And we knew with sales, we could really, really sell anybody. So that's what we did.
Yeah. And you were going after people who wanted to become closers, right?
Correct. Yeah. Anybody, honestly. So we were in B2C, which is, I will say, a little bit harder to convince people because it's a little bit less money involved. So you're not really solving rich people problems, but it is what it is. So we were really focused on people that just wanted to leave their 9 to 5 and make more money, live a better life, be able to work from their laptop. Because COVID really changed that. People wanted to work from their computer a lot more. And we marketed towards that.
Yeah, there was a huge demand. Like I saw so many like online closer ads and content. I probably saw some of your all's content too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because I was like trying to do a little bit of like learning more about that stuff around that time too. Really 2020, so maybe a little bit like prior to that.
Yeah.
But there was so much, Did you do like different funnels? Like what did the client acquisition side look like in general? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So we did a lot of different funnels. We tried so many different things. We did straight to call funnels. So where we would just have a landing page, they would watch a video, and then they would book a call, right? That worked for a little while. And then we had to pivot and transition to, we actually did a low ticket offer. So we did a small low ticket offer where we had a little course that they could buy for $17. And that was actually our first 200K month that we did from that. So that was really, really good. We got a lot of sales from that because we basically made it a 6-day challenge to where at day 3, they could check in with their coach. And that was actually a salesperson. We would kind of hear their problems, what they were dealing with, what they wanted. And then by day 6, they could officially book a call and apply for the program. And that worked really, really well. But the very beginning, all we did was straight to calls. So all we would do is we would have a landing page. We would get their information, their phone number, their email. phone number worked sometimes it didn't. So we really paid attention to that. When it wasn't working, we took phone number off, just had it really, really easy so people could get to the free training. And then we just had a free training video. And all we were doing was explaining high ticket sales, what it is, how it can change your life, and how to actually do it properly. So we gave a lot of information away in that video. They loved that. They loved the value of all of it. And then they booked a call, super, super interested. And once they booked that call, we knew, okay, now it's time to do everything we got, ask questions, handle objections, follow the thing that we have, and go from there. And we just, we just started closing like crazy. So I think at the very beginning, we ended up having a 70% close rate. And then, it was crazy. And then we eventually got to, I think our worst was around 50% that we were at. And that was because our price was exactly where it needed to be. It could have been a little higher, but we didn't want to risk anything crazy. So,
yeah. How did you overcome? Well, I don't even know if you had the resistance there, but like obviously when you start a new program, you don't have a ton of client case studies, and that can hold a lot of coaches back. So did you guys like have resistance there? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Good question. Yeah. So we had a little resistance there. It helped that we had experience prior to that of coaching. However, we had a lot of experience in sales. So the thing that we really focused on when it came to overcoming that is sales is a job. It's not anything new. It's not anything crazy. And it's the same thing with anything. If you're a coach and you're teaching coaches, like educators have been around for 100 years. I'm saying they've been around for a long time. Yeah. So if you have any type of proof whatsoever to show that you know what you're talking about, that's all you need to do. And what we really focused on, especially in the VSL, is how much we knew about sales. We were good at it. And so we just really communicated that. And whether you have client success stories or not, you need to communicate what your skill is and how good you really are. And if you communicate that, you don't need client success studies. All you need is you, and you're your own study.
Exactly. We mentioned like before we went live, we were talking about like branding and messaging and stuff like that. Cause that's like super, super, super crucial. Something that like I'm leaning into a whole lot with this new program. So how did you guys kind of go about determining, okay, we have this ideal client, they want this result. How are we different than the competition, and why should somebody hire us over someone else?
Yeah. We just kept it super simple. Super simple. So we were smaller than most of our competition, especially when we were starting. So we honed in on that. We were like, hey, we are smaller. And that's going to allow us to be able to teach you directly a lot more. We're also going to be hiring coaches and having coaches that will be directly with you. And that's something you can't get in a lot of these big programs. And the other thing is we positioned it as we are going to be with you even when you are getting results. When you are in a coaching program and you're starting to sell for it, right? What do you have? What support do you have? Most people just give you the course and they say, good luck. We'll see if you get success, right? We were tracking everything, not just in our side of the business, but also in their side of their success. So we were tracking how many jobs they applied to, when they actually got the job. Once they got the job, how many calls were they taking? What was their close rate? How could we effectively help them further? So a lot of that helped tremendously when it came to success, especially.
Yeah. How did you scale that? Because that's so many touch points,
Yeah. Hiring. That's it. You really, really got to make sure that you have somebody that can take that over full time. There was no way that me and my business partner were going to be able to do that because we were focused on a lot of other different things in the business, especially marketing. So we really focused on hiring the best possible candidates that we could that had experience in things like this. That's super important.
Yeah.
We started, hiring people we knew or hiring, friends or anything like that. And a lot of like my friends, for example, didn't have any experience in any of this. Right. So that was a little bit harder. You have to find somebody that has the experience and also be able to pay them good. Right. That's another big, big thing. So if you can do both of those things, you're going to scale extremely fast. And we were willing to sacrifice some of our paychecks in the beginning to make sure that we had a really good thing going. And that helped a lot.
Yeah. So you were talking about you were at, 50, 70K a month for a little while. Then you broke to 100 relatively quickly, but still you were at that level. Why were you guys kind of stuck at that level? And then what did you do to break through?
Yeah, a lot of it was just brand messaging. That
Hmm.
was really it. So we tried a lot of stuff, a lot of it with, the average like ClickFunnels stuff and all that. And we ended up actually creating, so we hired somebody on, I think it was Fiverr or Upwork, one of the two. We hired somebody to actually build a real website out and make it
Nice.
look good, make it have, really good branding, everything in between. We bought the domain of Simply Clothes, everything, right? And once we did that, we had completely different branding, completely different messaging. And that allowed us to break through very easily because we had so much more trust behind us. And that was it.
I love that because that's exactly what I did.
Yep. Yeah.
And
It,
it's
it
so,
actually works like crazy.
yeah, it's so good. It's so refreshing. Like, literally the guy that we just closed in Ascend today, talking about like how like everything just feels different. It feels like a breath of fresh air.
Exactly. Exactly. Because everybody's doing the same stuff. Everybody's doing funnels.
Mhm.
Everybody's doing all that. And, customers, a lot of clients in general are, not the brightest at times, but they do recognize patterns, and they can recognize patterns in the coaching industry and patterns in general. And when you change something and you're the only one doing it, that goes a long way, and people can see that, they recognize it.
Yeah, exactly. So you hit 100K in, was it 7 months, 6 months?
6 months, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, insane. And then you just
Yeah.
like fucking skyrocketed to like what, 250? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah. It was very fast.
Insane. So what, like scaling that fast, how, what problems came up and like what were you guys doing to solve them? I'm sure there was a lot.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. There was a whole bunch. One of them was fulfillment. That was a really, really big one. And, as a coach, you have fulfillment down, especially as an owner. Okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? How am I going to teach it? All that. When you have an insane number of people coming through, that makes it 10 times more difficult. And you have to figure out how you're going to keep that same quality with all the quantity that you're getting. So that was our first problem that we had to solve. And we did that by hiring as many people as we could, but also as efficiently as we could, right? So we hired for different roles depending on what we needed. So, for example, we needed a head of fulfillment that could make sure that everything was actually running smoothly in fulfillment. So we hired one of those. We hired role play graders. So we were obviously teaching sales, so we had people role playing together, and we wanted to have people going into those sessions and grading those people on their role plays, or having them send in their role plays and us grading them. So we actually had role play graders that were doing that, and that made it insanely good and insanely easy because each role play grader could watch 20 or 30 role plays a week. So it was really nice, and we were able to scale that really quickly. And then we also had a coach and a full-time CSM that was keeping the community engaged, making sure everything was good. So when people got in, and this is a crazy thing to say, but even if they didn't get results, they loved it because they were having so much support throughout the whole process that they know they were getting what they paid for. And that was amazing.
Yeah, that's so crucial. I've made that mistake,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not providing enough like of that support, even though like a lot of people do get results. You really have to have a lot of those touch points constantly.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And
So
people are
important.
very selfish with that, right? They
Yeah.
want to be like, hey, I'm the person that needs focused on. So if you can provide as much as you possibly can and support, you're going to go a long way. And
Yeah.
then I would say the second problem that we really faced was on the sales side of things, just making sure that we had enough salespeople and they were trained adequately. That was a
Yeah.
super hard part. Which for us, we were in the training business, so we better lock in and figure it out. But we did. We ended up figuring that out, and we had training regimens like crazy. For example, we would, if we had a new closer come on, we would train them for a week and a half. So the first week was full training. We would go over our scripts. We would go over everything. It was one-to-one training with our sales manager at that time. And then that half a week, they would be taking low volume calls and we would be reviewing every call, right? Then we would let them free after that. And as long as they kept their close rate over about 35%, they were good. If they went under 35%, then we would put them, we called it like detention training or something like that. But we would put them back in training and they would take low calls. So if you messed up and if you didn't have good enough percentages in closing and things like that, you got disciplined for it. right? And eventually, if you kept doing it over and over again, we just fired you because it's not going to fit with the team and what we're trying to accomplish. And
Right.
that went a long way.
Yeah. How did you, I mean, like the training range was so brilliant on the sales side. You had so much of a bigger team overall than I did. How did you handle leading all of that? Like, did you have a traditional executive kind of structure? Like, how did you go about all that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't even know what a traditional structure looks like. I'm not going to lie.
You got like
We were just kind
managers
of
on
winging it.
managers on managers and all that.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
managers for sure. So we had a head of fulfillment manager, we had a sales manager, we had a setting manager because we had multiple setters at one time. So we had quite a bit of managers. Now, mainly my position and everything was one, I was doing a little bit of marketing on that side, and then I was going and actually managing a lot of the team. So I was getting on with the managers. And I'm going to tell you the number one secret to everything is communication. If you set expectations correctly, they will know what you want and how you want it done and how fast you want it done. If you say all those things and they don't do it, then you need to ask that question. Hey, what did I say? Right? Like, I thought it was this, this, and this. Did I communicate that correctly? I just want to make sure. Yeah, you did. Okay, well, why didn't you do it? Right? And then they come up with some excuse. And that allows you to see, okay, either you're not communicating correctly or they're not fit for the job. Right. And that helped a lot. But with our managers, we had fantastic managers. They were great. And they were allowed to lead the team as we saw fit because we trusted them. And we were very particular how we hired those people. But they started running the team. And as it scaled, the less we had to really get on calls with them. And you start really building a system that works for you.
Yeah. How many hours a week do you think you were working?
At the beginning, man, probably 10 to 12 hours a day, if not more than that. At the end, 2 to 3 hours a week, maybe.
Insane.
Yeah. It was
Yeah, I
crazy.
love that, dude.
Yeah, we didn't have to do much of anything. I remember me and my business partner, we went on a snowboarding trip and we were snowboarding down the mountain, right? So we went up to the high point. We weren't taking any calls, weren't doing anything. We'd come down the mountain and open our phones and we're up 14 grand for the day. And it's like, this is awesome. It was fantastic.
I love it. I want to shift gears tangentially and talk about client acquisition because I'm familiar with how you were doing it, but like for everybody, like how do you the two biggest things that I always see with like coaching coaches is like how do you unlock the potential for scale with client acquisition and then how do you do it consistently? So
Mm,
I'm really curious, especially with what you guys were doing, is how you nail the consistency part. So if you want to share that.
right. So we were doing a lot of organic marketing at the time. We eventually got into ads later, but the organic is pretty much the same as ads, to be honest, and the consistency is the exact same if you have a system in place, right? So a lot of that was just putting systems into place. Who is doing what? That's the biggest thing. What is your setter or setters doing? Are they actively doing cold outreach, warm outreach? Are they taking inbound leads? Like, what are they doing? If they're not doing anything throughout the day, that is a problem, right? And
Yep.
you want to get rid of those people because they're underperformers, right?
Yep.
But we had people doing everything, and that's what created that consistency, right? It was just a system, and they worked. They worked super hard, and we were very diligent about hiring because of that. We wanted to make sure that if we had a setter, they were doing a certain amount of cold DMs, a certain amount of inbound DMs. They were having a certain amount of conversations and they were setting a certain amount of calls, right? With our closers, they were taking a certain amount of calls. They were closing a certain amount of calls. And if those quotas weren't hit, either one, it was our fault on the marketing side, or two, they weren't doing their job, right? If it was our fault on the marketing side, we adjusted, we make sure that we had our messaging correct. We were up to date on everything that was happening in marketing, and then it would happen. If it was their fault, we would fire somebody and hire a new one. It's really simple. But creating that system around client acquisition is super important.
Absolutely. You'd be shocked at how many times like coaches will ask me like, "Hey, I think I should jump ad strategies or I think I should do this or do this because like I'm just not getting client acquisition." And I'm like, "Okay, well like let's break down your funnel. How many touch points is your setter doing per day?" And they're like, "I don't know, 20, 30." I'm like, "Okay, get to like 200 a day and
Right.
then come back to me and we'll chat." It's
Yeah.
like it's like always that one bottleneck. I don't know what it is about it. But,
Yeah,
and like,
yeah.
I've
I
even
think
had problems of that in my business too.
right, right. I think people just don't know, right? A
Mhm.
lot of people just don't know what the actual number is, what the actual expectations is. And it's like
Yeah.
whatever number you're thinking, quadruple that, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what people can do. And especially with setters, like 200 was like bare minimum. Like you have to hit these numbers, right? How many conversations have you had today? At least 150. If you're not hitting those numbers, we're going to find a new setter, right?
Yeah.
That helped a lot.
A lot of coaches are even scared to push that hard, you know?
Well, then you're not pushing hard enough for your business and you're not going to hit the numbers that you want, right?
Amen.
If you're really passionate about hitting numbers that you really want to hit, you have to push hard. And sometimes you're going to be pushing yourself, sometimes you're going to be pushing other people. If people cannot get on board with that, that's fine. They're not a good fit for the culture. Hire somebody else.
Exactly. Exactly. This was amazing. I want to ask you one last question, and then we can cut it if you want. But um, with that program, if you were to rebuild that program and start it from scratch, like today,
Mhm.
how would you do things differently or similarly?
Good question. Um, if I were to do it differently, I would scale the same way in terms of systems and teams. However, I would do it with a little less people because I think you can scale more lean. The other thing I would do is I wouldn't actually pay any salaries and I wouldn't pay any commissions. I would do it all percentage based of
Hmm.
revenue. So I would do
Interesting.
rev share for everything. And the reason why is because I want people to own a portion of the business so they take it as serious as I do. And I would be very selective with that. But I know in my mind that I can have a really big percentage of a very small pie, or I can have a small percentage of a really big ass pie. Right. And I choose the big ass pie because it's going to be way more money every single time. Right. So if I own 16% or 20% or 50% of the company, right, and somebody else owns all of the other stuff, that's cool. I would hire somebody that can do all of the ads and actually take it serious full time and give them 25% of the company.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how I would build it differently because it would be very lean, but everybody would be super happy with the pay that they're getting, how they're doing, how they're performing, and they would perform like no one I've ever hired before.
Love it.
Yeah.
Other than that, which was amazing, by the way,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to a coach who's like got a program, maybe it's like just them or like a very small team, and they're at like 10, 20, maybe 50K a month. They can't really get past to that next like revenue threshold. What advice would you give them?
One, figure out how to get leads at volume. That is the most important part, right? If it's organic, if it's ads, if it's whatever, figure it out. My opinion, ads are going to be more consistent, right? Figure out how to do ads properly. Do your branding properly so that you have the communication going all the way through, right? You set expectations all the way through from your branding to your ad to your sales call, right? If all of those match, the customer is going to get exactly what they expected, right? Make sure that's on point. The second point, get good at sales. No matter how much you hate it, you don't want to do it, whatever the case may be, get good at it because if you do that, you will not need money ever again, right? So
Yep.
do that. If you can do both of those things, you will crush it. The hardest part that most people can't figure out is how to get leads at volume, right? Find the right coach, right? Make sure that they know how to get you leads. If you figure that out, everything becomes really easy after that. That's it.
Amen. Love it. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
Listen, if you guys want more from Zach, he is a coach in Ascend and he trained literally our entire sales module. So literally, if you want to learn how he did this and like what you guys did, how much collectively? You sent me it earlier.
Oh, I've trained over 3,000 students at this point, and they've done well over 50 million collectively.
Yeah. Just like insane numbers.
Yeah.
So like you were the guy, like as far as sales skill, by the way, when I plugged him in my offer, 90% close rate within like literally the first month. Like
Yeah.
absolutely insane. So like you are probably one of the best performing sales people I've ever seen in my life, but also incredible sales coach. That training you did was like money.
I
So
appreciate it.
thank you. But yeah, dude, thank you for this.
Yeah, of course, man. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching the video. See you later.
Peace, peace.